one of his comebacks would be like, well, if you like it so much, why don't you marry it?
I remember this. Every kid said that.
Well, someone made it the same comeback. You know, I think it may have been Miss Yvonne or one of the characters. You know, he was talking about fruit salad. You know, and then, well, Pee-wee, why don't you marry it? And this time he's like, I believe I will. So they had this whole ceremony of him marrying the fruit salad.
Ridiculous.
It was so ridiculous. Today we are reviewing Pee-wee as himself, the HBO Max special that aired May 23rd of this year, 2025. Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm JJ.
So, we both grew up with Pee-wee Herman.
Yeah, in the 80s, he was everywhere.
Yeah. And for most of us, he started at Pee-wee's Playhouse. That's where we started with Pee-wee.
Right. I remember that.
Yeah. And so, you know, I remember it vividly. I've got made fun of, you know, for liking Pee-wee so much in life. And so Pee-wee was my idol, pretty much, as a kid, you know, back in 1986.
Sure, I can see it was everywhere. I can see that. Yeah.
And I'd record it on TV, on VHS, and I'd watch the show like every kid would, and every kid today would, with their own show, over and over over. And you knew it.
Right.
You knew it word for word what the show was about, and you could verbatim, you know, perform it.
Sure.
To your parents or whoever was watching you. And so this Pee-wee special that happened on Max, it's 2 episodes. It's about an hour and 40 minutes long. We've both watched it.
Yep.
And
I loved it.
Yeah, me too. And it just amazed me after all these years of Pee-wee being my childhood hero. He basically, as watching it, as Paul Reubens was describing himself, he was basically describing me to a T, just about, because just all the creativity that he had, I had that same creativity and drive to perform and theatrics and all that, and so it just was...
So it registered, it hit home with you for sure.
Yeah, and he really was a role model for me, and he basically shaped my life. And I went back...
As he did for so many children,
yeah.
I'm sure, no doubt.
And I went back to watch Pee-wee's Playhouse. And I was so amazed at, like, okay, well, I got that from this in my life and that in my life, and it made me who the person I was today. And I've never really sat down to even think very deep about that with Pee-wee. Because Pee-wee is a zany character that is
wacky, sure.
Wacky, cuckoo, you know,
right.
Everything. And so, you know, you just, you know, it's a role model every parent loves, right?
Right,
you
right.
know?
Oh, yeah. It's
Shut the TV off, right. You know. I've had about enough of his laugh. And the secret word screams, you know, and all this. And so what's really fascinating about it was, as I'm watching the Playhouse, I've learned about this HBO special that he did, and I wanted to watch it, and my mom was cautious about it at first, you know, because it was HBO, and she knew what the HBO was, and I didn't know exactly what HBO had to do with, you know, adult themes and other things like that. But Paul Reubens actually started Pee-wee
at the Groundlings.
At the Groundlings, yeah.
Yeah.
And they asked, you know, to make an HBO special of his skit.
Right,
And so, he recorded it, and of course it had a bunch of adult humor, but
Sure.
when I actually watched it, which was a repeat, at the time, because it aired in '81. I was born in '81, so
Sure. As was I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so we've missed it, or either we snoozed through it, as
Right. Well,
as little younglings,
Right.
and so
Well, let's rewind to '81.
Sure.
Cable wasn't available everywhere, so you had to have cable in your area and then
Right.
pay for HBO subscription
Yeah.
upgrade just to have access.
and I have
to
a
everything.
memory of that too. My dad had purchased installation of this humongous satellite dish.
Oh, yeah.
That was in the backyard. I always remembered this big dish, and I wanted to climb on it, and just like any kid would.
Sure, it looked like a
It
playground.
it was like the largest papasan chair,
Right. Oh yeah, for sure.
But anyhow, that's how HBO entered our lives,
Right.
at the house. And so watching this HBO special, I was kind of weirded out at first because I was used to the Playhouse,
Right.
and I was like, why does the
Understandable.
Playhouse look different?
Right.
It looks very minimalistic, and where's Cherry? Where's Conky? Where's all this? All the toys that he played with, and who's this Captain Carl? And Captain Carl was actually on the first season, but I really remember him very well.
It was. That was it was Lawrence Fishburne, right?
No, that's
character?
Cowboy Curtis.
Cowboy Curtis.
Yeah.
Okay, I had that wrong. Okay.
Yeah, I forget who.
Who played Captain Carl?
Captain Carl was, but
Okay.
But yeah, so this review is going to be a mix of what happened in our lives, as well as what happened with what Paul Reubens sat down for over 40 hours with HBO to give his life story, basically.
Yeah.
And so it was a sad documentary, though.
It was. It was him bearing his soul.
Yeah.
I mean, there was some tough parts in there for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And so, everything with the HBO special just went over my head.
Right.
Yeah,
As a child,
my mom
most
was like-
adult stuff
My
does.
mom would pass by. I don't think you should be watching that. I was like, but it's Pee-wee,
Yeah, right.
Ah!
Yeah.
So yeah,
How could you not get drawn in as a
Right.
child? I mean, just look. He's
Yeah.
ready for action right there. So, yeah, I get it. I get it. I remember coming home. Of course, it was, in the '80s was the heyday for afternoon cartoons and Saturday mornings, and I remember this being part of the rotation. And it was, I would get up and do the Pee-wee dancing with it and everything too. I was there,
Yeah.
for sure.
yeah, and he inspired me to be theatrical, and I wanted a stage in my bedroom, and so the closest thing that I got was my parents had bought this custom-made bedroom set, and along with it was this long toy chest that sat underneath a big window on our upstairs floor of my childhood house. And so my mom had made these curtains. I also was inspired by Johnny Carson,
As were so many people.
and so he had these
masterful
colored
entertainer.
curtains, the colored panel curtains, and so my mom had done something similar to that, and so it was. I used the top of the toy chest, which you opened up the lids to get the toy out, so it was a flat surface, but it was
Perfect stage for you, right?
It was 3 feet off the ground, and so I'd get up there and I'd act my heart out.
Right?
And you had curtains behind you, and you had the window sill, which was about a foot, maybe or half a foot, and so enough for a little kid to like sneak behind the curtain and make their entrance, just don't fall out the window.
Right. It's good advice.
Or break the window,
Yeah,
at least,
That too.
But yeah, and so
I could see this. I could see young Jamie, being the entertainer.
Yeah, the Pee-wee costume here.
Right.
This is the exact Pee-wee costume that I had as a young kid, And so I wore that along with the half mask, plastic mask of Pee-wee on my face. And so I had done, what is that dance called that he would do? What is that song called?
I think it was Tequila.
It was Tequila.
Awesome.
Yeah. And Pee-wee, he'd do this, and so that was actually...
In heels, no less.
Yeah, in heels, and big heels. Heels that
skills.
would not fit
Skills
anybody.
in heels.
So that was actually done on Pee-wee's Big Adventure,
Right.
that scene. And so I had performed that in the Pee-wee costume on my stage, and I've got video of it, and it's playing right now.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, he wanted kids to be creative and to express themselves, and that is exactly what happened with me. And really, I didn't really care what people thought about Pee-wee's Playhouse, whenever I went to school, even though I got made fun of, and I didn't like that, but, it was just kids,
Well, you had a
kids.
strong character, and
Yeah.
you were passionate about what you liked and
Right.
believed in, and, weaker characters don't, they don't always respect that, so,
But yeah, we were all kids too, so, I mean, anything that
it's,
different,
sure,
or
kids will be kids.
kids
yeah.
will be kids. But it's fascinating that didn't bother me. I would go back, go home and watch either reruns or on Saturday morning whenever Pee-wee would come on, and it just I don't it's the hardest to call him Paul.
Right. Well, he didn't want to be known as Paul. He
Right.
wanted Pee-wee to be the main character.
Right, and that's it. I think it was and so I think he in the documentary he did regret it a little bit.
Yeah, to a certain degree.
to a
When
certain degree.
when your creation overshadows you,
Yeah.
then that's that's a part of
So
it. And you have to put your ego aside.
Yeah.
So
Now it's more easy for me to call him Pee-wee instead of Paul.
right. Well, that's how you
Obviously,
knew him.
if he was still alive, if I ever had a chance to meet him, obviously I'd respect him enough, to call him Paul, or Mr. Reubens, until he corrected me, wrong or whatever.
Sure.
But he was this outlet for me,
Right.
and he helped me just be myself, especially at home. I wasn't quite myself away, at school or anything like that.
Well,
That
school's
came-
not the place to be
Yeah,
wacky, zany,
yeah,
and
yeah.
everything like that. You go there, and they would
But
not
yeah,
tolerate such
everything's
things.
a time and place for everything.
Right. Right. For
Yeah.
sure.
And so, it was for that time period when Pee-wee was popular, and
Which was the entire 80s decade.
basically, until the last of his season, and even it was in reruns until, whoops, whatever happened in the theater, stays in the theater,
Until it doesn't.
yeah, and then it hits the airwaves,
Right.
that I recall. I think it was like watching the news, or either a news brief before the 10 o'clock news, or before some ABC special. You might want to send the kids off to another room while we tell this next story.
Oh, they broke the news about him being arrested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
I remember my mom telling me about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and he got a lot of flack for that, and it really, looking back at it, of course, I guess people were thinking he may have been doing different things, like with children, perhaps at that time. I don't know, but it was unjustified,
Right.
and
Right.
so it was an adult theater, and obviously probably other people were exposing themselves as well in the theater,
It's-
and it was just.
If Hollywood has taught us anything, then yes, that is the case. An adult theater
Yeah.
has adult themes and adult things going on.
But Paul, he did not subscribe to the Hollywood thought, or he. I think that they allude to that in the documentary, that they may have used that to go after him,
Right.
because he didn't quite fall in line with the Hollywood elites, and he just did his own thing, and we need more people that just do their own thing.
Going back to, he was a strong character, he was a strong person, and he did what he wanted to do, when he wanted to do it, how he wanted to do it, and that's not always appreciated by the higher ups.
It's not popular, with Hollywood, but yeah, it just created a different world for Paul. He was exposed as his character died off, basically. His character that he
the brand,
spent his whole life creating and living out in the public eye was now tarnished.
Right.
And so we have Paul, who's now arrested, and we now learned that Pee-wee Herman is Paul Reubens. Because before that, if you didn't grow up in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you didn't know that almost every single appearance, if not all appearances, on TV, he appeared as Pee-wee Herman. He did not let on that he was anybody else but Pee-wee Herman.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why I have a hard time trying to say Paul,
Well, that was by design. Yeah. That's what he wanted. And so mission accomplished.
He built that character. And when that happened in 93, I believe it was, with the theater incident, it just... I felt bad for him, even as a kid, and I didn't understand all of it, and what exactly he was doing. But at that time, it was a sad day, because they were yanking Pee-wee off the air, Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Right.
And anything that had associated with Pee-wee. And so...
Bad press.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you didn't have those episodes on VHS tape, then you couldn't watch Pee-wee anymore.
Right.
And so luckily I had kept them on tape and I watched them from time to time.
Sure.
But then, it just wears off like anything else, that was new and popular, wears off, and you move on to something else. But it just was heartbreaking to see this guy, especially watching the documentary, to watch Paul, how it changed him.
Right. Well, it would change anybody. I mean, that's understandable. You can't go through something like that and not be different.
Yeah. And so, he was very close with family, his mom and dad and everything. And so he was a family man, and he did things for his mom and dad, and he was actually at home, at the time when they caught him, he was visiting,
Right.
And so it was basically the end of Pee-wee for
a while.
For now,
Sure,
for a while. Yeah. And you never knew that he would ever, appear again. And then it was later on that realized that he had made, I think it was in 1999, MTV Movie Awards or MTV Music Awards or whatever. He had made an appearance as Pee-wee Herman. Even before that.
I remember it was just everyone was supportive, and it was over the top love from everyone. I do remember that for sure, because MTV was huge then, and I mean it was like everything was happening in my world on MTV, the music videos and the shows and just everything.
Yeah, and the man doesn't age.
I thought it was interesting that when he was developing the character, that he was drawing inspiration from everyone in his life. The sounds, that type of voice came from somewhere else, and then the mannerisms, and so it's interesting how everything gets pieced together, and then a character is born, and then whenever he got the Hollywood star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and it was Pee-wee. Yeah. It wasn't Paul's star. So
he didn't get credit there.
Right.
Yeah.
He didn't even get credit for that. So
Yeah. And I'm going to rewind to, where, he gets the laugh and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that I thought was hilarious was, and I did not know this except for it was revealed in the interview, was that his significant other, when they were living in New York, every time that he would eat something, his partner would eat something, he would go like a chocolate, chocolatey,
Exactly.
And so that was just
It's awesome. Yeah, it's awesome that you know when you build a character like that, obviously legendary Pee-wee's character, that as an artist, I got total respect, because to be able to pull parts and pieces from everyone around you and then create something that is a global phenomenon is in and of itself amazing, to be able to do that.
Right.
To be that artist.
Yeah.
So I also thought it was very interesting watching the documentary that he started out on tour and they made the movie before the show.
Yeah.
And it just, to me, that I had to wrap my head around that, because you would think that you would make the show first,
Right.
develop the cult following, and then go, okay, now we need a spin-off movie. But they did it totally backwards from how they do it now. It's 2025, and if they start out with a movie first, and then again, that's just not how they do it now.
Yeah.
So I always thought it was super cool, or since I've watched it, that the whole movie, the vibe of the Pee-wee's Big Adventure, it was just different. The visuals were different, and I really didn't realize that was a Tim Burton movie.
Right.
Until recently, and I was like, oh my God, this makes total sense now, because you can see, Tim Burton's influence in it. And of course, it was Tim Burton's, I believe it was his first, right? And one of his directorial debuts.
I believe so, yeah.
And so he was crafting his early style, and it's...
Paul wanted Tim Burton to direct it.
Right.
And he had to have a fight over that. Paul had to have his hands in everything. Because
he was
that was his
creative.
Vision. Yeah, that was his vision. And he had such a hard time doing this interview because HBO wanted, their hands on it.
They wanted control, yeah.
Him and the other guy had words, and struggles. And so, but at least, we got what we got.
Right.
And even at the very end, I mean, we can come to this a little bit later in detail, he left a phone message, and they played the phone message at the very end of Pee-wee as himself.
Right.
And that was just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But yeah, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, it was so different. And then again, as looking through child's eyes, with watching the Playhouse first, the TV series, you're like, oh, well, when did this movie must have come out just now,
Right.
I suppose, but it was before, And so you watch it and you're like, well, the house isn't the Playhouse.
Right. No, it's not.
Maybe, and you're trying to think as a child, trying to figure out all this, continuity, even though there wasn't continuity, but it was like, okay, well, the playland, Puppet Land is where he goes to play. But he lives in real life, so that's his house in real life,
Yeah.
as Pee-wee Herman.
And I thought it was interesting that it's again, the documentary revealed that they wanted the Pee-wee's Big Adventure world to be that Pee-wee wasn't abnormal. He wasn't the different one. It was just he was just another normal person in in that realm, and it's always it had a look and a vibe that was totally different, but totally believable in the same sense.
Yeah.
So they managed to capture, again, it was like captured lightning in a bottle.
Yeah. And they had written the movie based on books that they had studied about how to write a movie.
Okay, I didn't know that. I knew that they didn't have a subject for the movie. Just based off the documentary, that they were struggling to find the subject matter of what the movie was going to be about.
Right. And so, if I'm remembering correctly, it was based on like an outline of what you should write, what you should follow when writing a movie, to make a good movie.
Right.
And so they studied it and they wrote that out, and it's a perfect book example of a movie now, because you look at it and you can read about it,
Right.
like, oh yeah, they use this element. You could, film teachers could probably use that movie,
Sure.
and say these are the elements that they chose to put in it, and this is what makes a good movie. And so I don't know those elements, but it was a good premise.
Right.
The bike gets stolen. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. And he finds it again.
And he finds it again. But, you have this zany adventure, this
Right.
big adventure,
Right.
of trying to find out where the bike is. And the Alamo doesn't have a basement, but the gift shop beside it does have a basement.
Right. I mean, that's how much sense does that make? But
Yeah.
sure. I mean, it was Pee-wee's World.
Yeah.
But again, what's interesting about the movie is during development, and they revealed in the documentary that they didn't really know what direction they were going to go with the movie.
Yeah.
Until Paul saw everyone riding their bikes around set in the studio, and he
Right.
said, "Hey, I want a bike." And the bike that the studio sent him was the one, and he immediately knew that, hey,
Yeah.
this is Pee-wee's bike, and the movie needs to be about his bike. He's lost his bike, and that... Again, it's lightning in a bottle, because so many things had to come together in the right way to make that work. And it's just in hindsight, looking at it, that's extremely rare.
Yeah.
It's extremely rare.
Yeah. And, at the end of every Pee-wee episode, Pee-wee's Playhouse episode, he gets on a scooter that looks awfully similar to his bike in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Right.
It has on the wheels. It has that in the spokes. That little swirly design.
Right.
And it's red, and that's his scooter. And so that was another thing that I noticed as a kid. That he's got a bike in the movie, but he has a scooter at the Playhouse. Why not the bike? I tried to make things fit and make sense so much. Another thing, before he appeared on that MTV movie special, or that award special, he had appeared. The first movie that he appeared in after that '93 arrest was Batman Returns. He played the Penguin's father, or Mr. Cobblepot.
Right.
And so the movie opens up with the Cobblepot household.
Another Tim Burton movie.
Another Tim Burton movie. And for the life of me, I don't remember the actress's name, but the actress that co-starred by Paul Reubens as Penguin's mom, his wife, was the same actress from the girl, the love interest in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Big Top Pee-wee?
No.
Okay. Okay. So
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Because I thought it's in the documentary. He was saying that it's. I didn't even. I'd have to go revisit again Pee-wee's Big Adventure. But I know that in the documentary he revealed that a lot of people wanted Pee-wee to have more of a love interest.
Yeah. Remember the scene in Big Adventure where the Pee-wee and the girl is in the dinosaur?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the lady that I'm talking about.
That's the same actress.
Yeah,
Okay.
same actress.
Gotcha.
So it's funny that I think about it now. I'm like, okay, so Pee-wee changed his identity, got married to the girl, and they had this penguin creature.
Okay.
As
a child would relay it in their mind.
Well,
yeah,
I didn't as a child, but now I'm thinking,
gotcha,
this
gotcha.
could work out. This could be a really, creepy storyline.
Yeah, right. So Pee-wee's offspring was Chester Cobblepot, huh?
Oswald Cobblepot.
Oswald,
Yeah,
why did I say
Oswald,
Chester?
yeah.
Oswald Cobblepot.
So he appeared, it was a short role. The role was supposed to go to Burgess Meredith, who played the Penguin in the 1966 series
Okay.
of Batman with Adam West and Burt Ward. But he was too ill to accept the role. And so it went to Paul Reubens. And so he had not appeared in anything since that arrest. And so I'm thankful that he did that part. That's another franchise that I love. I mean, you see the Batman poster behind you.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah.
One of the small roles, since we're talking about roles in other movies other than the Pee-wee character, and so was in one of the Cheech and Chong movies, is what I remember seeing him from. And of course, I was a teenager when I watched that, but he's the hamburger guy. It's hamburgers, but that was, I think that was even predating his Pee-wee Herman stuff. So I think that I'm going to go back and look at the timeline, but I think that he was still developing the Pee-wee character and using that voice in other ways before it even became Pee-wee.
Right.
And again, it's anytime I watch that, I just remember that Paul Reubens is the hamburger guy. I don't know if you've ever watched that, but in that scene, he uses the voice and it's hamburgers. So,
I think there's a scene of it, I think, in the documentary, too.
I think so.
think so,
Well, I know that in one of them, he was like the hotel clerk.
Right.
In one of them.
Yeah.
So he was in, so it's it's interesting how Hollywood worked. They had all their networks and all the actors worked together and liked each other. And so, I mean, he came back and he had multiple roles in those franchises.
He worked hard. He wasn't one to just sit on his butt, and not do anything.
Right.
Now, there was a time wherever, he was living with his partner, that, one of his best friends was like, are you going to play house for the rest of your life, or are you going to actually go out and go for your dream?
Right.
And so it was a big kick, wake-up call.
Everybody needs a nudge every now and then. Right.
So he pursued it as difficult as it was to break off that relationship for him.
Right.
He went and he made it successful, and so he worked very hard from, the different venues, and I remember watching from time to time, him appearing on David Letterman.
Okay.
He has, and I've watched it since then. I've watched it on YouTube. He's got about 4 hours worth of appearances.
Wow.
On David Letterman, the Late Show with David Letterman.
Yeah.
And so you see him not as he was in Pee-wee's Playhouse, but you see this younger Pee-wee, and he has a more nervous voice.
Well, I mean, you're on the Letterman show. Everybody would be. That's just natural. Be a little nervous.
I think he was. I don't know if it was like his actual nerves showing, or if it was just the beginnings of his character, and he kind of matured it a little bit along the way, because it was
probably a bit of both.
But you see a different performance as Pee-wee, kind of like as a kid, not sure of himself, but he has all these things that he wants to show, and so that type of thing. And so he said in the documentary that he was not good at memorization, as far as like memorizing lines.
Sure.
Basically. So anytime that he would appear, as Pee-wee, he'd have a prop.
Sure.
A prop bag. And so he'd have all these crazy little things.
Which was his original tour.
Yeah,
he said he used props,
And he used that for David Letterman too. And David and Pee-wee just loved each other, and they did well with each other. And he would do his little skits that his little green screen skits that you'd have a motion image in the background, and you pretend like if it was like, on the street, they pretend like they're driving or whatever, and so watch out, Dave.
Yeah,
And
right.
stuff like that. And so David just be laughing, like, this kid is crazy.
Right, right.
But he went
Makes
along
for
with
good
it.
television.
Yeah, it does. But that stuff is fun. And David Letterman is, of course, one of my favorites as well.
Yeah, another legend, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I thought was interesting was when he's talking about his home, in Hollywood and everything. And I always envision, I've never been to, Hollywood not yet.
Me either.
But I always, just imagine the Hollywood sign being, far off and everything. But in the documentary, he revealed that the home he bought, the reason he bought it, the main reason was so that he could go swimming and dive off his diving board and see the Hollywood sign on the hills behind his home. And I thought that was super cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So.
And,
And he kept the house the same from when he bought it. It's still got the mid-century modern, the vintage type of vibe. Because I went online and looked, and it's still like the way it was.
And that's another thing that I've found out about myself, was that when I learned in the documentary that he had this collection, and that
he was a collector.
He was a collector. And so I have kept my toys, every little thing from childhood. And my mom and dad, my mom made sure that we kept those things. And I have almost every single thing that I've had from childhood with action figures, things like that. And I do not have any place for them. So they're in a storage unit right now.
Right.
But I have many of them on display. So did Paul Reubens.
Right.
And so he had said that he had cleared out, some of his collection from time to time because, it's good to, start over,
Sure.
But he'd build it back up again,
Oh, well, yeah, that's
and
how
so
collecting works.
And so, it was not something that I did as, conscientiously as a child, But when now I'm collecting these things and making sure that these things are not going to deteriorate
Right.
or age as faster as what they should, and keep them as pristine as I can, But I wonder if a little bit of that was, from Paul.
Influenced by him collecting.
Sure.
Sure. Because he, even in the show, he had collections. I remember seeing, he was a collector throughout, and it's as you would have to, as Paul, as the character, you have to put some of yourself into the character.
Yeah.
So whenever he, was showing off some of his collections on there, it just had to rub off. So everybody's like, ooh, I want that. Ooh, I'm going to get that.
Definitely. And, as watching the Pee-wee's Playhouse season 1 now,
I have started to rewatch it.
Yeah. You can't help but watch it, You see sections of the Playhouse that are themed.
Right.
And so this is what I want to do with a house, is section off themes. And I've started with this room, which is my movie game room.
Which is impressive.
Thank you. And I've worked hard on it and still not quite done with it. But, I don't think it'll ever be done. I think it's just,
that's a work in, it's always a work in progress.
Take down stuff, put new things up, and showcase that. And then I've got my other room that have most of my collectibles in it. And I, show them off. And I've got the toy channel. That toy dude, that I show that's those things off,
Right.
But it's good to know that I'm in good company.
Sure. Yeah, as collectors go. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I had, so speaking of collections, I had I remember the Transformers, and of course the G.I. Joes, and the Micro Machines, and we're going 80s toys exclusively. And if I recall, at a certain point we moved, and I was devastated to find that my mom had gotten rid of most of my collection in the toy, because I had one of the big, it was a big football toy box, and the top of the football, you take it off and then everything's in there, and the whole thing was gone.
Yeah.
I was just heartbroken. But yeah, I could definitely see how, seeing it on TV,
Yeah.
seeing him collect and having his little, universes and everything had its own place, that, you can't help but be influenced by that.
Right. The playhouse, like his bedroom was like this Western scene, old Western, scene. He had cowboys, Indians, that type of thing that was right there, and then right beside it was the puppet band, and it just had it has vibes of like a coffee shop, and these puppets, playing, a band, instruments and stuff like that, and reading off poems like they're cool cats, things like that. And then you had the kitchen too, which involves learning how to cook, and he would teach how to cook. Make sure you get your mom and dad, or a parent, to help you out, if he was using the oven or stove or whatever.
Safety first.
Safety first, yeah. But I remember learning about French toast. I was like, ooh, I want French toast, So
right.
I was like, telling my mom, this is what I want to make, and she's like, are you sure you know how to make it? Yeah, I do. Pee-wee taught me, and so we'd make it and all this, and there he'd do crafts on the show too. That oh gosh, I want to say it was like recycled paper. It was like making the paper look old.
Okay. Right.
Like making a historic document.
Okay.
And make it look like it was
aged, for sure,
100 years old and whatnot. And it would be, you'd use coffee grinds, and you'd rub it on the paper, or you soak it in the paper and you let it dry, and it has that old crackly feel to it.
Right.
And so I had to try that too, and there were several other things that I've learned, and it was just, he was a learning tool.
Right.
He was a great resource.
Right. And that was all by design. I mean, that was, he
had a heart for it.
Yeah, he did. And in the documentary, he was talking about he would present it in such a way that the children wouldn't pick up on any of the adult innuendos.
Right.
And if they did, then it was because they had been exposed to it in their childhood, or, from their parents or their home or something like that. So even, it's interesting that he was able to present adult themes in such a way that children could get it. Adult themes, cooking is not something that children typically get into. So, even on his show, inspiring children to go cook and learn. And that's definitely, that's when I was a child, I didn't cook. My mom didn't let me near the stove, and I didn't have any desire to. So good on you for wanting to cook French toast.
But yeah, today I cook my own meals, and he had that little start for me, to want to be in the kitchen or want to learn, and so there's other people. Pee-wee wasn't the sole person that inspired me to do everything that I do today, but he helped along the way, and I'm sure he helped a ton of kids too, and he always taught to be respectful, nice to one another, and it's fascinating though that Paul was a smoker. But one of the things that he did was he never, ever wanted to smoke in front of the children, that were on the set, or anybody, he, either in private places, he would smoke. And he didn't want the kids knowing, because smoking was bad.
Well, again, it's an adult thing.
Oh, well, yeah.
So he wouldn't necessarily want children to see him doing that and then try and emulate that.
Right.
So, because that would have been bad. Little Jamie going, Mom, I'm ready for a cigarette. I saw it on Pee-wee.
Oh, you saw it on what? It's time to turn that off.
Yeah, right. Oh, but you know, with that generation, there was a lot of people smoked cigarettes. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, that's understandable.
Yeah.
There was another, who was it? It was Ernest. You know, you know,
Yeah.
all the he was a smoker.
Oh,
And he
yeah.
was the same way. He didn't ever let anybody see him. So I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
definitely.
So everybody's got their quirks. There was, oh my gosh, there's one actor, I forget his name, but he didn't let anybody ever watch him eat. He never
Yeah.
ate in front of anyone. So I don't quite understand
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
but I definitely understand, you
Yeah.
know, Paul
Oh,
not
I
wanting
understand
Pee-wee,
that.
yeah, not wanting
Yeah.
the children on set to see him do that, you know.
Yeah.
Speaking of, it's interesting that some of those children, one of them is, you know, she's an actress now, and you know, so it's just everything comes full circle at some point.
Right.
So that, to me, you know, with him, them releasing the documentary, and it's having, looking back on my childhood, I can definitely see some of the influences.
Yeah.
You know, maybe not as much as it did for you,
Right.
but yeah, it was part of my life, no
Yeah.
doubt. You know, every time I watched it, it was the opening sequence was cool to me.
Oh, yeah.
The claymation stuff, you
Yeah.
know, and of course that was all by design. You know, watching
Yeah,
the documentary, he
definitely.
wanted it that way, and he had them refilm it and change the angles and make it do this, and so it's
And
just,
I've done stop motion, not to that detailed
Yeah,
level, but it takes a long time.
I can see, yeah, I can imagine it would be tedious.
It takes a while, and especially with these people working for somebody that has it in their mind what they want exactly, and they're describing it to somebody,
Right.
and that somebody tries to mimic, you know, what they have in their mind. It doesn't always match up.
No.
And so knowing that you have to go back and reset everything and change this or change that, it's not, especially in the 80s, it's not like, you know, today where, you know, it's all digital on the computer.
Right.
But it's, you know, film, it's videotape, it's whatever the medium was that he used. And so I don't know if they had to redo the whole thing or just that portion of it, you know, to get it right. But still, it was a process, and it took a long time.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And so I feel for the people trying to work for him, you know.
Yeah, right.
You know, they're working for Mr. Perfect, you know. And of course, it's funny because I can describe myself as Mr. Perfect, you know. When I, you know, try to get people to execute some of my video ideas and things like that, it's like, no, that's not how it is, you know. And some of them have gotten mad, and some of them gotten, you know, very frustrated, and sometimes it's my fault.
Well, that's
you
the
know.
creative process.
But still, I know what I want, you know.
Right.
And I know how it looks in my mind, and it looks fantastic, you know. And so I get that with
Oh,
Pee-wee,
for sure. Yeah.
with Paul.
Yeah,
you know.
it's, I think everyone has a bit of a perfectionist in
Yeah.
them, and when you're a creative and when you're in that world, it's almost like you would have to compromise some of that perfectionist because of, to your point, because they can't see what you see.
Correct.
So it's that struggle of accepting what you're being delivered content-wise, and then providing the constructive criticism to get what you want out of it, and walking that fine line and balance of not making them mad and running them off, you know, and then again getting what your vision is out of them. And that's a struggle. That's hard for anybody.
And I believe Michael,
even small projects.
I think Michael Jackson was the same way too.
I could see that.
And he had a vision, and he wanted it this way, and no, I don't think it would, you know, let's do it this way, you know.
Right.
Let's do it over again. And so it's, a lot of people get upset about it, but, you know, it's, if you're one of the people that get upset, you know, well, just, you know, try to be a little bit more patient and see it through, and it's probably much better to see it through and to have that person, you know, say, yes, that's exactly it now.
Right.
You know, you got it.
Right.
You know, endure,
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah. The struggle's worth it
Yeah.
at that point,
Yeah. Or maybe, you find out they're just the wrong people,
Well, you got to go through that
yeah,
process
yeah.
to get to that point, for
And I'm
sure.
sure Pee-wee, or Paul, see, there I go again.
Yeah.
Paul had to go through that process too, and maybe had to let go of a couple people.
I have no doubt. Yeah, it's not everybody wants to be on board.
Yeah.
People have their own ideas and their own agendas, and they have to put their egos aside, for
Right.
the bigger ego that deserves it.
Yeah. Now, did you ever see the Christmas special?
I did, but I don't remember a ton about it at this point. I would have to go rewatch that
Yeah.
but I do remember there was a Christmas special going on. Yeah.
That was the epitome of, for me at least, like the top episode. And what I remember was that it aired at prime time.
Okay.
And they didn't have the normal, Playhouse theme, but it started out with they had the military opening up, and so Pee-wee was singing a song, about Christmas time and all that, and he had so many guests on, TV stars to movie stars.
I remember him touching on it, talking about it in the documentary. Yeah.
And it was, everybody said yes to it.
Right.
Even Oprah, And so it was just amazing to see all these people, just be in the Playhouse, and it was just about an hour long, but it seemed like it went forever and ever and ever. And maybe it did because of commercials,
Yeah.
Like an hour is supposed to be like probably an hour and a half to 2 hours maybe with commercials
Right.
Put in it. But it was one of my favorites. And it was Christmas time too, so I loved Christmas.
As do I. Yeah.
And one of the funniest things was that it was like Pee-wee would... one of his comebacks would be like, well, if you like it so much, why don't you marry it?
I remember this. Every kid said that.
Well, someone made it the same comeback. I think it may have been Miss Yvonne or one of the characters. He was talking about fruit salad. And then, well, Pee-wee, why don't you marry it? And this time he's like, I believe I will. So they had this whole ceremony of him marrying the fruit salad.
Ridiculous.
It was so ridiculous. But it was
But
so,
it worked.
It was so
But
funny.
it worked,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And
You got to roll with that type of stuff.
yeah, and one of the things was, that Paul Reubens had officially had come out as a gay man,
Right.
in the documentary. And so he had said that he had put those references in the Playhouse.
It went over my head,
yeah,
but that's the way it was supposed
Yeah.
to be. If you're a craftsman at his art, and he was, then he was able to intertwine multiple themes, adult themes
Yeah.
alike, in there, and make it such that it would go over the child's head for sure.
Right. But now that I watch the Playhouse, I see it.
Oh yeah, as an adult for sure you see it.
It's I think in the first episode it was like he had a lifeguard, for the pool outside of the Playhouse, and the lifeguard was topless, male, had muscles and everything, and so I was like, there it is, and then in the Christmas special too, I don't know if they showed that in the documentary or not, or if I just watched a little bit of it, afterwards. But he was getting so many fruitcakes from everybody. And of course, fruitcake, the name fruitcake, I guess, as well. But he said that he made an addition to the playhouse that was just entirely made of fruitcakes, the walls and everything. So he opened it up, and you see these two guys in work belts, and they're muscular and everything, and I don't think they had shirts on either. And so it's like, oh, there you go,
Right.
And those are the two that I remember, just currently. But as a kid, it's like, what?
Right. Yeah. It just totally went over
It's
your
like,
head, and it didn't register.
Yeah. It's like, okay.
Right. So he's
got some workers.
Right. So Paul, he was putting his soul, his identity, and how who he was and how he was through into the show. So that had to be liberating. Even though it was subdued, it had to be liberating on his part, just to
Right.
put little parts and pieces of himself in there, and it's. Again, in hindsight, when he's walking around in high heels and stuff, and he was like, he decided the first time he would do that was his mom's high heels. So, that's, it's, again, in hindsight, you can see everything as an adult in there. And it's.
As a kid and even as an adult, even before the documentary came out, I had learned that he was gay. And so, even as an adult, I never thought of Paul Reubens as gay. And it was just, I don't know, it was news to me. I was like, oh, okay. And then as you were saying, it's like, it makes sense. It you look back, now, and it's like, okay, I see it.
He wasn't portraying that to the children.
Right. One of the other things, though, that, he had talked about, he's coming back in a little bit, and then sometime in 2000 and the 2000s, he got arrested again, and this time it was for indecent, photos.
It was part of his collection.
I
remember it. So in the documentary,
so they thought it was child pornography.
Well, in the documentary, he revealed that he had a house party, and someone came to his home and saw his collection of, it was adult.
Vintage.
It was vintage, right, vintage pictures, So, I mean, it wasn't, there was no children in it. There was no children at the party. There were no children in the pictures. And ultimately, the investigation, after all of the, thousands of photos, vintage photos that he had, they honed in on these one or two that, were what they deemed, on the line, borderline, or whatever. But in any collection that artists have to push the envelope. Right. So if you're taking these types of portraits, vintage portraits, whatever it may be, of course, they weren't vintage then, they were present tense, but you have to push the envelope. If you're an artist and you're trying to do something like that, you have to be bold and, just do a little more than the shock factor. Yeah. You got to add in the shock factor.
Yeah. Yeah, and, it was another period with Paul, that, anybody, would have this reaction if they're truly, trying to do good in the world and be a good influence, that it affected him so much.
Right, because it was unjustified.
And even more so because it wasn't true,
right?
The allegations.
And total witch hunt.
And so they dropped it.
As they should have.
Yeah, but they still charged him with the pornography.
And it was enough to tarnish his reputation even more.
And so he had to live with that, and he finally made a comeback as Pee-wee, and so it was awesome to see that. He had Netflix, make the movie. Gosh, I don't recall Pee-wee's Big Holiday.
Okay.
And so it wasn't in my opinion, wasn't as good as the other two movies that he had made.
Right.
But it was still something. It was still Pee-wee. And he had aged, even though he looked basically the same. he had revealed, I think, in a Conan interview, that they did a lot of CGI, on his face, to probably hide wig or hairlines and things like that, and to touch up, or erase wrinkles or whatever. But Paul, it was amazing that even in some interviews and things like that, as he's approaching in his 60s, that he still looked like back then in the 80s or 90s.
Right.
He was youthful looking, and that's amazing. And he's like one of the like Dick Clark. Dick Clark never aged. Now, of course, you actually look at the pictures and the videos, side by side. Obviously you see it,
Right.
but you age with people, and you're
Right.
like, well, he looks the same, and he basically looked the same. I mean, even in the interview, he had whiter cheeks, and had gained. It seemed like he had gained a little bit more weight, but
Right.
I mean, he was 70.
That's natural. Yeah. It's
And that just blows me away too. That he was 70, he looked 50, at that time. Maybe even like late 40s, in my opinion. But it's just amazing how he kept up his youthfulness.
Sure.
And so, I think you see a lot of that too with this generation, that we're not dressing like our mothers, fathers, grandparents. When
Right.
we age. We're we're
I know.
we're dressing fun, Scooby Doo.
Yeah, for sure.
Marvel.
Yeah, I love it.
And so that's just our thing, and so we I think every generation though tries to look like they do whenever they're teenagers or starting off college. I think
Right.
that's my idea.
Right.
You keep that appearance throughout your life.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
But yeah, that has nothing really to do with Pee-wee other than him looking like he used to.
Than his youthful appearance and something. Yeah, for sure.
But it's fascinating to look at, just life and
Right. Oh, for sure.
and so he had made a comeback with Netflix, and he also had done Pee-wee on Broadway, wasn't it? Or
Yeah, it's uncharted territory for me, bro.
Oh, okay. Well, he had done his.
Do tell.
He had revamped his show that he did back in the 70s, 80s.
Like the original touring
The original
show. Okay.
tour. But of course, it was the Playhouse from the TV show,
The set.
The Set.
Okay.
And he had Miss Yvonne, which had appeared, but he also had, because Captain Carl had passed away, the actor,
Right.
in the late 90s, I believe. He had passed away. And so they had Cowboy Curtis. And I don't think it was Lawrence, though, that appeared in this show.
Okay.
But it was Miss Yvonne. And so they had all the characters from the Playhouse, pretty much all. And so it was a stage show, and HBO, once again, recorded it. And I've got it on DVD or Blu-ray, actually. And so it was basically the same premise as the 80s HBO special, 81 HBO special, but kind of updated for today.
Sure.
And of course, they had Conky.
Okay.
And they had, I remember seeing like behind the scenes of it several years ago, that the technology had improved so much with the puppetry, the electronics and the puppetry as well.
Yeah.
And so things were a little bit more easier, to do,
Yeah, for sure.
more believable.
And I'm sure that made him happy, to be able to execute at a higher level.
I remember seeing him do a plug on YouTube before I knew that he was a part of the stage show again, he was sitting on Cherry, and he had an iPad, and so he was going through, the iPad and everything, and it wasn't a commercial for Apple or anything. It was just him, exploring the iPad, and so Magic Screen, I think, was getting a little bit jealous, because the iPad couldn't replace Magic Screen.
Okay.
So, but yeah, it was fun to see that, and fun to see Pee-wee, up and at
Back in his
at
element.
it again.
Yeah.
And it was something. It was special, and so, he had a major comeback with Pee-wee, and everybody loved it. And one of the fun things was with Conky was they had to have the secret word, and so secret word was fun. And so, of course, Pee-wee goes through his spiel of, does everybody remember what to do when, you you hear the secret word, scream real loud,
Right.
let's try it, And so, it's funny because it's like, it's a live audience.
Mm-hmm.
And so all these people in the audience are our age,
Right.
And so our age or even younger, and so when the secret word is said, everybody's screaming.
Yeah, I mean,
And the camera goes on the audience too,
sure.
Yeah.
That's another testament to Paul was his ability to command the stage.
Yeah.
And command an audience. And I mean, he got, to your point, he got a room full of adults to act like children again.
Right.
So.
And they loved it. And I loved it too when watching it on TV. I wish I was in that seat. I would feel like, I was actually a part of Pee-wee's Playhouse again. And I'm sure that's what the audience members felt. And if anyone that was a part of that show is watching this, leave a comment of how you felt, on with that stage show, watching it, as a Pee-wee fan. But yeah, he had hid from everybody, except for his closest people,
Right.
that he was sick.
Right.
For a couple of years.
That's totally understandable.
Yeah, it's
very private
privacy.
matter.
Yeah. And he was a private man. He was a very private man.
Well, and that's a scarce commodity in Hollywood, and fame. Privacy and fame typically don't go together.
Right. And so, he kept his sexuality, to himself. He was able, I think, successfully, especially when he just focused on his Pee-wee, character. He could have a private life.
Right, because
he
wasn't Paul, he was Pee-wee. Yeah.
And when he strips off the gray suit, the red bow tie, and he just puts on normal clothes, and he, lets his facial hair grow out a little bit. Who are you?
Right.
You
could go to the grocery store and walk by anybody, right?
Are, focused on this is Pee-wee. If I ever see him, on the street,
the tie and the shirt.
Yeah. Then I'll say hello,
Right.
But if you see anything different, you're not going to
you don't recognize that, for sure.
And so yeah. So he had a good private life.
But he definitely, you can't have that 100% of the time.
No.
So that it's to me, it's it hurt my feelings watching it, knowing that as private as a person as he was, there were those times that whenever his private life came out, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
So that is the trade-off, is if
Right.
you want to be private and with fame, when something does come out, it is a big deal because because you're so private.
Right.
You don't release tidbits all the time.
Right. And I think that's what I was going for, was that I think a lot of Hollywood actors need to shut up about a lot of things,
Just
Big-
act. I don't
just act.
I don't
Be
need to be told how to live
be an actor,
from an actor.
you know.
Right.
Be an
Just
actor,
do your job.
and I know that Dolly Parton. They wanted to fish out of her. What do you think about this in politics or things like that? And she's like, she refused to take the bait because she's like, I'm a singer,
Right.
and I'm not getting into this, because I have my views, but you have your views too, and so I'm not going to, there's better people out there. I don't know exactly.
That's
what
not
she
her
said,
specialty.
but
Her specialty was singing.
Was not going to go there,
Right.
and so Paul Reubens wasn't going there, and unfortunately, the public, uncovered him 2 times, and made a big deal out of it.
Right.
Which shouldn't have, but that's life,
Right.
and that's, I guess, the price you pay for being
Pee-wee Herman.
Pee-wee Herman or
Yeah.
any actor, But yeah, I think, actors should just mind what they do, That's my little tidbit.
You're not wrong. I agree. I don't.
And I think he did that.
I don't go to an actor for my political views.
Right.
I go for them to tell me a story.
Yeah.
If I want political views, then I'll go to the politicians.
Yeah. And
That's their profession.
It'd be a nice world if we could just, share, what we believe, here and there, about politics or whatever. And
And have a respectful conversation
all
about
that
it.
Comes about it is like, oh, that's an interesting view. Here's my view, but we always have to fight about it,
Right.
But
Well, it's divisive.
Yeah.
It's a very divisive subject. So
but
I mean,
I didn't mean to go there, but
and again, it's divisive. So it's such is life.
yeah.
So.
But anyhow, so him being ill like he was, and and even he did this interview while he was sick and having issues, and nobody knew about it. HBO didn't know about it, and they didn't even finish because Paul had passed away
Right.
before. Luckily, he had made that one message that they shared. And it was just so painful.
And that was like days before his death, right? The day before
It was
or something.
the day before.
Was it the day before? Yeah.
And he was still using his technologies, his iPhone, and videoing things, while he's speaking and videoing his, nature. And those are the things that he loved. And it was so painful for me to hear his voice, because it was a weak voice.
Right.
It was not as feeble as some people might be on the brink of death, but you definitely could tell that there was an issue and there was a problem, and that he was expecting probably to leave this world.
Mm-hmm.
And so to get that last thought out, and the thought was, I'm not a pedophile,
Yeah, he was trying to clear his name.
Yeah.
And to your point, that's sad, because all the way up until the day he died, he was trying to clear his name, and and just, I don't know. That's
me as a person,
that's tough.
Yeah, me as a person, I want to be, it's too late for this, but I just wanted to be his friend. I wanted to be, it's fine, it's okay. I don't believe in that, that what they were saying about you. You are Paul Reubens, you are my hero, and, just be there,
Right.
And I would
Supportive.
Yeah. And so that's the type of person that I am. And so that's what was going through my head, I was like, gosh, I wish, yeah, I could be there, but, as fate has it, he had his own set of friends, and I'm sure his own set of friends were there for him.
Oh, no doubt.
No matter what. But still, no matter how much somebody tries to fix something, or for somebody else, that person, whether it be Paul Reubens or somebody else, they still have trouble reconciling,
Right.
and coming to terms with it. So, that's a life lesson for anybody.
Sure.
Is you just have to be patient with people that can't get over something sometimes.
Right. Well, it takes time. So.
It does. And sometimes people don't get over it.
Right.
So you just got to be there. You never know what someone's going through.
Right. This is true. This is true. People
And so-
internalize it and they'll put on a brave face,
Yeah.
as he did when he
Yeah.
was dying, and nobody knew. I think he had, was it 2 types of cancer? Wasn't it? He had lung cancer.
It was a sickness that led into complications in his lungs.
Right.
I believe. And that's what he died from, was complications, I think, from his lungs. I don't recall exactly the name.
Right,
and
right. I did read it,
condition.
and to
Yeah,
your
I
point,
did
I don't
too,
recall it exactly
Yeah.
either.
He was my childhood hero. And because of the documentary, watching it, he's one of my heroes now.
Yeah.
And something I will always remember about him.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, and that's
Yeah.
a legacy to him,
Yeah.
To his character and to his, just his talents. I mean, to be able to do that and live that life and to walk that line of having the character and then the personal life and all of the friends in Hollywood, and then, it's always interesting to me, the human experience of, we come here and what are you going to do with your life? And I'm going to get, deep here, and you
Yeah.
got the cliche. You got the year you were born and the year you die, and then
Yeah.
that dash in the middle. What are
Yeah.
you going to do with your dash?
Yeah.
And he did a lot with his,
Yeah.
and he made an impact clearly on a
Definitely.
lot of people. So,
He had his ups and downs just like anybody else. It was unfortunately on the big screen for everybody to see, but
when you achieve at that level, then everyone wants a piece of you, and you lose your privacy, and I guess that's the trade-off.
Yeah.
That is the trade-off. So you have to give parts of yourself to the public when you're in the public eye.
Yeah.
And he
he
tried
did
to, yeah. So
But yeah.
again, that was him. That was Paul. And
Yeah.
then, he became, Pee-wee, the character. So
It's fun how they did this image, though, because this is the playhouse. This is the tile that's right by where the flowers are in
Okay.
the playhouse. And then this is where the chimney is.
okay.
And so, but this is not the playhouse.
Okay.
This is Paul,
Right.
because he doesn't have the coat.
Right.
This is
Okay.
Paul looking
And Pee-wee's reflecting
at
back.
Pee-wee's reflecting back.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I just noticed that this is Paul, but this is Pee-wee.
Right.
And he's looking at his character. And that's the reflection that he has, is Pee-wee as himself.
Right. The name of the documentary, wasn't it? That was it. Pretty cool.
Yeah.